Show me what you got, show me what you got. Show me what you got, show me what you got. Riding down your block with that thing, about to let it go.
Welcome everyone to another edition of Agile Takes. I'm Tony Pietrocola from AgileBlue. This is where we take a few minutes to discuss the latest important trends in cybersecurity. Today, we're kind of mixing things up a little bit. Instead of a client or a partner joining us, we're joined by our very own Patrick Bennett, who works in our customer success team. Patrick, thanks for joining us today. I'm thrilled to be talking to you about this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about my passion, OSINT.
For those of you who don't know, OSINT stands for Open Source Intelligence. And Patrick is, I think you'll see, extraordinarily knowledgeable about this subject. But, you know, Patrick, when you think about it in an organization's threat landscape, there are literally thousands of online sources out there. Where our relevant risk data is hiding, and what, when you think about security teams, especially you think about yourself, what do security teams need from OSINT platforms, you know, to address these huge information gaps?
Yeah, so a lot of security teams focus on their internal infrastructure, what's going on within their organizations and within their company. So they don't really branch out into what the external, field is as far as the attackers, ideas and how they're going to attack and their tactics and techniques. So getting in the mindset of externally, thinking about your cybersecurity is definitely a gap that I feel that is something that should be filled. Like, for example, attackers might use data breaches to target internal employees, gather information, emails, passwords, even social security numbers. That social security numbers, you like to think of those as private information, but really nowadays it's pretty easily found on the internet, as well as targeting, phishing emails and gathering details with open source intelligence on a specific employee and learning their personal life and tailoring those phishing emails to them will definitely raise the bar when it comes to them opening up the email and maybe clicking the link, So those phishing emails, they're 90% of the time they gather that information through open source intelligence means, and as well as, malware and ransomware attacks, another one. But one big one that is pretty popular nowadays that has been somewhat patched in a way by the companies is SIM swapping. SIM swapping, are you familiar with that, Tony?
Yeah, it happened to me personally. So thanks for bringing it up. And that's a very sore subject, but I'll let you proceed. Go ahead.
Okay. So since you're very well versed on the victim side, SIM swapping is essentially when, I'll let the viewers know, is when your phone number SIM card gets swapped to another phone number. So an attacker would essentially call AT&T, Verizon, if you're using Mint Mobile nowadays, and trick or socially engineer the customer service agent to transfer in your number, in this case we'll use Tony, to another phone or another device. And then that can do two things. It can pass multi-factor authentication, and you could text employees, corporate employees, your boss from that number, and they will determine, is this my employer or not? And they might go along once again with those phishing emails. And so that's the external side. So if you have two-factor authentication on all of your devices and your security teams are really pushing two-factor authentication, you got to really educate your employees as well to making sure they don't have personal information online that can be leveraged to attack a SIM swap. Because if you're posting on social media and everything, and you're telling everybody where you're at, you're telling your family, friends, all of a sudden your 4 questions on your security card is, what's your mom's maiden name? Where were you born? And what's your dog's name? You can gather all those information just from the internet most of the time through open source intelligence means. And like I mentioned, to come full circle, those data breaches will have possibly the last 4 of your social security number. And a lot of these companies, they go off of that as a secure question. And so they can get that SIM swap to happen. And that is the external side as far as open source intelligence and really getting a full picture of your cybersecurity needs on the internal side as well as external.
Patrick, what you just laid out is tremendous. So 2 things. One, mine was about 18 months ago, actually maybe 2 years ago now. And it happened, I got this SMS message that says your package is delayed. And I mean, how do you know? This was probably a little bit more chance. The only thing that saved me was two-factor authentication, that I had that set up everywhere. And that was one spot they weren't able to get anything. or proceed anywhere because I had two-factor set up everywhere. So, as you further think this through, and, OSINT, protects against those, intentional types of attacks. But obviously, like you said, it's the ability to gain that real-time, location-based awareness, hopefully to help protect, right? And not just organizations, but individuals, things like that. What types of OSINT tools should, small to mid-sized businesses consider for their organization?
Really, it can go from as low cost as possible to possibly free if you have the knowledge, all the way up to the highest tiered, which is what's called EcoSec. And they provide location, they provide social media monitoring, social media scraping, constant, emails about keywords, all on the dark web, the surface and everywhere. EcoSec is expensive, but that's why, they're the best in the business. But there's better cost options that are very similar, like Shadow Dragon, SocialNet as well. And they're a very great company for, social media keywords and monitoring those dark webs. If Tony Pietrocola shows up on a hacking form or the name, they're definitely going to notify you about it. And you're going to be ahead of the game before that, occurs. And a lot of these can be done for a little to no money in regards to using various APIs, Facebook APIs, Google, as well as Twitter is a great one. So pivoting from the cybersecurity focus, a lot of people are leveraging open source intelligence for their small, medium-sized business. Let's say you created a clothing company and you live in San Francisco or Los Angeles. There is now organized criminal gangs that actually discuss, okay, we're going to recruit 50 people and we're going to go into this company and just ransack it and steal it. And all those conversations are happening either on Telegram, on the internet, or on these really niche forums, and really, infiltrating and having backup that you can actually prevent these attacks from happening is huge. And law enforcement is definitely investing a lot more money into monitoring those different, those gangs on the internet creating these events. It's not just a one-off, thing, a couple friends, they are organized. And as well as organized in physical side, there's organizations that are targeting companies in the cybersecurity field as well. And they're talking online how to exploit them. Oh, I found that this website's vulnerable to this CVE. How fast can we jump on this as far as, when 0 days come out? Because if a 0 day comes out and they find it first, and then we find it a day later, there's a gap of 24 hours where they're looking and they're trying to exploit that to get in your company.
A lot of damage can happen in 24 hours, no doubt about it. So I'm president of an organization called InfraGard, and that's a public-private partnership between the FBI and cybersecurity folks. The interesting thing is human trafficking. People would think, how does that have anything to do with cybersecurity? I mean, it's obviously an absolute disgusting, miserable thing, and unfortunately, it's growing like crazy. But there were some tech folks who used a lot of these OSINT tools to regular folks, not the FBI, to potentially infiltrate some of these human trafficking gangs here in Ohio, where I'm broadcasting from. You're in California, but and they actually made headway to the point where they actually got in the way. They were, they meant they meant well, but they got in the way of an actual FBI investigation because they started publishing things using a lot of OSINT tools that were free, but it started tipping off the criminals because the FBI were coming in the other way. So OSINT tools are very powerful, especially if you know how to use them. And their heart was absolutely in the right spot, right? Human trafficking is miserable. What can we do from a tech perspective to hopefully help? And, unfortunately, it did some good things, but unfortunately, there were some bad things that came from it as well. So it's a lot of power. And, I guess as a parting shot, when you have that type of power, I guess it could go wrong too, right?
It could definitely go wrong. We like to think of open source intelligence as completely passive reconnaissance and never, interacting with them, essentially never alerting the end user that this is even happening. And if you cross that line where somehow they're notified, then that is beyond OSINT at that point. It'd be kind of social engineering. So we try to be totally passive in the reconnaissance. And a lot of people, it's like that devil on your shoulder, like, oh, I can get this information if I just friended them on Facebook and made some post that they interacted with. I can get that piece of detail. but that, could do a lot of damage, just like investigations or letting them know, and all of a sudden they went dark and you can't find any more information. But I must say, if anybody's listening and you want to do those types of investigations and you want to pursue OSINT, there are organizations out there that do partner with law enforcement and have the correct procedures and policies in place to, do these investigations and submit this data and really make a difference. Two of them that, I've been involved with, one was Skull Games, which is a event that happens in Florida. It's also remote, that they assign you sex trafficking crimes with law enforcement, and you can actually research and investigate those alongside law enforcement and present new leads. And so that's a great organization to be a part of. Definitely look into that. And then another one, which is, I think, more readily available if you're a new OSINT person looking to break into it and you kind of want to dip your toes, is Trace Labs. So Trace Labs is a missing persons investigation. They have gamified it while working in law enforcement. So they consider it a OSINT CTF. So you get assigned 5 cases. It's a competition, and you're trying to present new leads to law enforcement. And for example, there was 200 teams last event. I think I scored like 30th, but I've been a judge at like 6 events multiple times. And each flag is has points associated with it. Okay. So let's say a missing person goes missing March 28th, and the law enforcement says, the last time we heard about this person is March 28th. But somewhere on the internet, on their social media accounts, Reddit or anything like that, they made a post on there from March 30th. That moves up the timeline, and that's huge for law enforcement to close the gap on, when they went missing the last communications. And that flag is worth about 500 points. And then also find, social media friends, other social media accounts, those are associated with flags. And all this information is being compiled for law enforcement to, resolve the case for them. And they partner with law enforcement all over the world. It doesn't matter what country you're in, they're picking up cases, and it could be cases that are 2 years old going cold. It could be a person that went missing 7 days. Right. It could be very, very recent, and everyone's working together for a good cause, and they're a nonprofit, and all the money made from the event is donated to different organizations that support the cause as well.
That's awesome, Patrick. I think people would find this very fascinating, and I'm sure more folks listening to this would love to get involved. So a couple of things, Patrick, amazing, obviously not just a passion for it, but an extreme intelligence for it. So thank you for sharing this. If you want to get in touch with Patrick, just go to AgileBlue.com and we'll get you connected with Patrick if you have any questions. Patrick, thanks so much. I'll let you get back to your day.
Thanks.
All right, take care. Bye.
You too.